Hello everyone and welcome back to another Doctor Who Reddit leak video, potentially the final one I'm going to be doing for a little while, because I've gone through so many Doctor Who Reddit leaks over the last couple of days, but this one's interesting because it talks about a new potential production company for Doctor Who following the rumoured exit of Bad Wolf. So we're going to be getting into that. Subscribe if you're new, that would be greatly appreciated. Any support is really helpful. We're trying to get to 40,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I'd love to get there. But with that said, let's just dive right into it. Jack Thorne, Warp Films, and Doctor Who. New anonymous account here to protect my identity. Additionally, I've used AI to change my writing style for similar reasons. Just to head off the "this looks like it was written by AI, so immediately discount it" comments. Okay, weird choice. I guess I kinda get it, like if there's like writing patterns within like this person that are detectable, but I mean, weird choice. Believe this or not, that's fair enough and entirely up to you. With all the rumours swirling around about future showrunners and where Doctor Who goes next, I thought I'd share what I've been hearing doing the rounds among certain people in Sheffield. Why Sheffield? See below. The story is that the BBC has been quietly courting a number of production companies to take on the show after the Christmas 2026 special. The special is apparently intended as a deliberate swan song for Bad Wolf, with RTD and the current setup being fully bookended at that point. On the creative side, the prevailing belief is that Jack Thorne is lined up to take over as showrunner, well, head writer at a minimum, after RTD. I know his name has already been heavily rumoured, so this isn't anything new. Locally here, the assumption is that this is more or less agreed in principle, rather than idle speculation. Thorne has also apparently consulted on the production side. The BBC have a legal commitment to increase their quota of their shows made by independent production companies outside of London, and his preferred partner, which the BBC said to be quite receptive to, is Warp Films. Warp are based in Sheffield, ironically in the Park Hill flats used as he has his home during the 13th Doctor era. They've worked with Thorne multiple times already. This is England, The Virtues, Adolescence, etc. And they also have a solid relationship with the BBC, Reunion among others. They're currently in the progress of remaking the 1984 BBC film Threads, also set in Sheffield. From what I'm hearing, Warp are the current frontrunners, the preferred option, so to speak, to become the next producers of Doctor Who. They've apparently gone as far as looking at facilities in the north of England to set up a dedicated, siloed production base and even a new production unit specifically for the show. This includes discussions around a bespoke space, possibly in partnership with Production Park in South Kirby, which Warp have already used on Adolescence and other projects, making use of extended reality tech to assist with costs and the look and feel of the show. There are also said to be some ambitious ideas coming from Thorne and Warp around how the show would be produced. A pitch deck has apparently been put together, focused on the production and format, nothing specific about stories or casting as yet as I know of. Format-wise, the BBC are reportedly assessing different ideas. The two options being discussed most seriously are either 3 to 4 feature-length film episodes per year, or a 6-episode series of hour-long episodes annually. I think if I had to pick between those two, I would be much more of a fan of the 6 episodes annually. Obviously, it would be a reduction, but as long as we could guarantee annual, that's something I would be on board with. The general aim seems to be to elevate the show in a more streaming-era sense, for want of a better phrase, moving away from what's internally seen as a slightly dated children's TV feel in the RTD2 era, and towards something more at the mature end of young adult that is still strongly caters to adults. Comparisons I've heard include things like Stranger Things and His Dark Materials. I've said for a while that I do think the Stranger Things crowd is potentially, a good kind of one to try and maybe tap into with the future of Doctor Who. And it's why, there's a part of me, obviously we spoke a bit about one of the actors being rumoured in another leak being a 20-something who'd been on Quarry. And I kind of think that if you want to get a younger fan base on board, maybe that makes some level of sense to go with someone, that's more relatable to that age demographic potentially. But I mean, yeah, it does make a lot of sense to sort of take from these projects that have sort of been capturing public attention and widespread public attention across all age demographics, rather than Doctor Who that does seem to struggle outside of its previously established audience. A lot of the direction apparently still depends on whether another streaming partner comes on board, and what budget that unlocks. The Warp Thorne partnership does have the interest from streamers after Adolescence, Netflix in particular, are said to have a lot of confidence in that particular team and would happily open the checkbook. This is something that they said in the last one as well, I believe. Like, the idea of Thorne being on board makes Netflix more keen to maybe partner on it because of his track record working for them, though they naturally prefer something original and more adolescency from them, and are more cautious about Doctor Who given Disney Plus's performance. Still, the door isn't closed, and the BBC have opened discussions with a number of streamers, including Netflix, based on the attractive Thorne Warp partnership. I nearly said Thorpe, like Thorpe Park there. No idea how far down the line any of this has got as it stands, though. Whatever happens, and whatever any of this actually materialises, the expectation is we won't see much Doctor Who in 2027 at all, if anything. The current thinking is that a relaunch wouldn't happen until 2028 at the very earliest. Yeah, I would be sad about that, but I can't say I would be, like, overly surprised. Like, I mean, I was kind of expecting that anyway. I was kind of hoping maybe, there was a part of me that was hoping maybe, you know, late 2027, maybe. I can't say I'd be overly surprised if that did happen. I'm told there was a bit of a rush fairly recently, driven by concern that something had to be in place by the end of the 2026 Christmas special production, most notably a new Doctor casting. That urgency has apparently eased, with the focus now shifting towards getting the reset right and allowing a completely fresh production to fully take shape. Because of that, it wouldn't be surprising if there's no new Doctor reveal at the end of the special, potentially just a casting cliffhanger, fade to black with a simple "The Doctor will return" title card, or something similar. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, we didn't have an official Doctor casting by the end of that special. I'd like to believe that we would have, like, a new showrunner in place and a new, like, team in place, ideally, but I would not be surprised if, like, there isn't a new Doctor at the end of 2026, for sure. That said, names have been discussed in terms of potential Doctors, partly due to earlier panic, and partly due to give potential streaming services a potential sense of who might be involved. Thorne has been consulted on potential preferences, but I've no insight at all into who those names actually are. Take all this with a heavy pinch of salt, but it's very much the version of events doing the rounds in the Fagans crowd, which would probably only make sense if you're from Sheffield. I don't know what that means, so I'm not from Sheffield, so I don't know what that means. So if anyone does know, let me know in the comments below. But obviously the key takeaway from this is the idea of there being a new production company that work more closely with Jack Thorne. I feel like that's pretty much entirely dependent on whether Jack Thorne is the one who's going to take over, which he is being rumoured a lot, but also I'm not going to completely rule out McTighe yet, because he definitely does seem to be the front runner as far as, like, the current Doctor Who lot are concerned from what we've been reading. So I'm not going to completely rule him out, but if we are to assume Jack Thorne is the one to take over, it does kind of make sense that he would like his own production company on board, or, you know, a production company that he works with more closely. Obviously, he has worked with Bad Wolf as well on his Dark Materials, so I don't think that completely rules out Bad Wolf either. But Warp Films, having been the ones who did Adolescence for Netflix, might have that level of prestige, pull, traction with, like, streaming services that maybe after the, you know, sort of stumbling release of Doctor Who on Disney Plus, Bad Wolf maybe doesn't have quite as much with the streamers at the moment. I don't know. That's kind of a speculative thing on my end there. In terms of format, obviously either 3 specials, movie type things, or 6-hour-long episodes. I would definitely prefer the latter. Obviously, it wouldn't surprise me if specials were the way they went for a couple of years, mainly because of budgetary restrictions. Obviously, again, as they say, it depends entirely on what happens with a streaming partner. But I definitely would prefer a series a year, even if it's 6 episodes. If it's 6 episodes an hour long, I can, you know, accept that much easier, so long as it actually is yearly. Because, you know, Russell told us that 8 episodes was going to be yearly, and then obviously that didn't happen. To be honest, I'm not really sure why he did when, like, he couldn't guarantee that, but that's a whole other can of worms. Yeah, interesting stuff. It's interesting because, as I said in a previous leak video, the last few weeks had basically nothing when it came to, like, Reddit leaks or, you know, rumours or gossip, really. That was really that, like, interesting to read, and then all of a sudden we had, like, you know, 3 or 4 major leaks, and what's interesting is, whilst they do disagree on certain things, there is some weird, like, threads coming through this idea of, obviously, you know, it kind of being between McTighe and Jack Thorne, the idea of, you know, Bad Wolf maybe heading out alongside Russell, you know, the idea of there being some names for the Doctor being thrown around in the very early stages at least. You know, obviously all of these are claiming different things to a certain extent, but there are similarities in all of them. Now, you could say that that's just them trying to make a rumour or make a leak sound more legitimate by basically parroting things that have already been said by others. I think that's definitely a possibility. Or it could be that something is going on. Like, the thing is, as I said, like, there was nothing on these forums over the last few weeks. Basically nothing. And then all of a sudden, like, over the last few days, I've just seen a ton of Reddit leaks, which obviously is not necessarily indicative of anything, but it is interesting. Because it's like all of a sudden everyone's sprung to life. And maybe that's because, you know, there's production finally starting to begin on the 2026 special, so therefore, you know, there's more conversations around Doctor Who, or whether it's just, you know, as I said, the future is being discussed in these ways. I don't know, but it's interesting nonetheless. I think the thing that would make me sad about Warp Films as well would just be, obviously, seem very talented, so there's nothing wrong there, but obviously it would mean moving out of Cardiff and moving out of Wales, which, as a Welsh guy, I've always really kind of loved Doctor Who's second home, essentially, being in Cardiff and being in Wales. You know, that was always a really cool thing to me growing up. So I would be sad to lose that, but at the same time, it's not the end of the world, and chances are they would definitely still use Cardiff as stand-ins for London, just as they did in the Chris Chibnall era as well, which was largely, you know, Sheffield-based. So, yeah, interesting stuff. Let me know what you guys think, subscribe if you're new, like if you enjoy, and I will see you later.